everyone. Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. I have a very special guest here for the show today. Can you go ahead and announce to the world who you are and where you're calling from?
Who I am and what I'm going to announce to the world. Yes, with the little flag. Hi, my name is Annika Pampel. I am a storyteller by trade, an author, a writer, and director, and I'm currently calling from Seville, Spain.
Wow, how is that? What is the weather like over there?
Oh, it's glorious. It's about 47, oh, sorry, in 37 degrees Celsius, which is around, I want to say 97 to 102 Fahrenheit.
Oh, wow. So you know different languages. I like that. And different temperatures. You know the Celsius from the Fahrenheit. That's pretty cool.
I always have trouble still translating one to the other. Don't nail me down on that. I will get it wrong.
You didn't this time. Tell me about your past leading up into your present, your extensive history.
My extensive history. Well, I was born behind the East German Wall, so into former communism, into that whole mess of a political situation. And when I was very young, the wall came down, and then I grew up in that post wall era, which came with a lot of paranoia and a lot of cool history and a lot of things that were dicey. And then I studied art. I went to a University of Bavaria in Bayreuth, and I studied theater history and theater directing. I got a Fulbright scholarship, and I came to the United States, and I went first to IU in Indiana for a year, which I loved. Gave me kind of an idea of what the college life is in the United States. Very American. And then I went to Savannah, Georgia, to do my master's in directing and film writing. And that's also where I kind of got my first job, my first film experience, and I stuck around with it. It led me to LA, and that's where I live now. And I work and live in LA.
Wow, what an extensive history. Like seriously, you should be proud of yourself for getting your bachelor's, your master's, and just doing the thing. Like tell me, with that extensive history, you're a filmmaker now. So tell me about some of the films you've written.
Some of the ones I've written, I usually focus on true stories. I've always started with a piece of truth, something that's important. When I meet people, my biggest thing is I want to listen to their life story. And when I find something where I'm like, ooh, I want to explore that, then I take that kernel, ask, of course, for permission. I do this right. And then I marry that together with an element of the fantastical. So it's fantastical realism that I really explore. And that for me has a spectrum, right? I love anything from a film like Spotlight that's very close to pure journalism, all the way to Pan's Labyrinth, where you have two lines, right? You have a fantastical and you have the truth of the situation that sort of meet in the middle. So that's kind of where my stories live, somewhere in between on that spectrum. And that's what I focus on. So I've written a story that is my book that you've heard about. It's called Death of a Nightingale. And it
Yeah.
started with a true story. It started with my dear friend in high school. His name was Daniel. And when he was 23, he actually took his own life. And that really affected me quite deeply because he had this vivacious sense of humor, right? He had this bigger than life personality, and he was so full of love and of fun and of joy. Um, and that didn't quite compute for me. How could somebody like that do that? And it stuck with me for so many years. So I eventually wanted to write about it, but I wanted to write about it in a way that wasn't too serious because I wanted to do him justice and his sense of humor justice. So I thought, what a better vehicle than a vampire story, because it's a little absurd, right? It's unreal. There's something where you can relate to the characters, but you're not in real life. You don't have to completely just go with the darkness. There's some absurdity there, there's some humor there. And so I came up with this idea of a vampire calling a suicide hotline asking for advice on how to die, which is kind of funny. And I went from there, and that's how the story develops.
Wow, your imagination, child. Oh my God. So basically, the vampire calls a suicide hotline. So that is humor. That's the
Yes,
humor. And did they find love? I mean, do you
yes,
mind
they
telling it?
do. Yes, they sure do. They're two women. They do fall in love. Of course, you know, the normal girl, our girl Vanessa, from Atlanta, has a boyfriend, so she has a couple of things to figure out there. Doesn't usually go for women either. So there are a couple of questions there that we have straight from the beginning, and you know, it's a vampire she falls for. So there's some other things going on, and she doesn't quite believe it because she's a realist. She loves her rules. She loves her, you know, 1 through 10, we can count it, we can plan it, we can do it. That's the kind of mindset. And then all of a sudden, this woman calls, claiming she's a vampire, wanting some advice on how to die, and that's a wild thing to happen, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Like seriously, you got. And I don't want to keep getting into it, so I just wanted to say, how long is the book, and is it on audio?
It's not on audio yet. It's not super long. It's kind of a shorter book, right? It'll be like a good 1 night, 2 night read for people that inhale books like I do. So it's that, because it's also quite quick witted. So they have a lot of, you know, fun little scenes. It's a little sassy, it's sexy, it's a little naughty. So you'll just go through it. It reads itself really, but it's currently not on audio yet.
And like, to rewind a little bit, what really made you, like, what's the difference between once you graduated for film, but before let's rewind a little bit more, before you decided that you wanted to go for film, what was the properties that were made up that made you say, hey, look, this is what I want to do, I want to do film, because that's a hard, genre, and you've seen this, you're only giving us a taste of it, but it just sounds like you brought his depth to life,
I
you
did.
know.
I took his pieces, you know, and he's on every page, although I don't mention his name. There's not, you know, it's not his story, but there it is his story in pieces and in bits. But how I came to film was, you know, I was 18, and in Germany you can apply for colleges, and I wanted to originally study something very different. But the application process, what I noticed, it was right when you do the A levels, what we have in Europe, right? Your final exams, essentially, they're all in 1 week. And when I did them, I also did the entry level exams this same week for this college that I wanted to go to, a very big music college. And it just computed, and I saw all these women there, and I was like, oh my, I want to do this thing where women in our time, and especially at that time, still have an expiration date. And I didn't want to have an expiration date. I wanted to get better with every project I do. And I found that with storytelling, you can do that. You know, as a performer, as a singer, as anything like that, as an entertainer that is front and center, you are a storyteller. But as a woman, particularly, still in our time, although we shouldn't, we still have a stigma and an expiration date, which we all need to fight against. But that's a different topic. At that time, I decided I wanted to continuously grow. And that's why I picked this, because writing is really hard. And at the beginning, I was shit for many years. And then I became a little less shit. And then I became a little bit better. And now I'm pretty good. And so in 20 years, hopefully, I'll be pretty decent.
You talk like you're from the future. Like, I know it sounds different, but you talk, the way your wording is just, you know, I've talked to a lot of people, but how you put your emotions, your positivity, and your aspirations and what your goals are in motion, you just say, hey, it's going to happen, like, it's going to happen like this. You know, and that's what got me, interested, have all the plans that took in place actually happen in your life.
Slowly, like, you know, some took longer, much longer than I expected them to. I thought at 22 I was going to married with 4 kids. I'm going to do all my directing jobs, and I was going to be a multimillionaire. Turns out it didn't happen at 22. So it's like this thing, you know, you have to kind of reevaluate as you hit those things and continue and really dedicate yourself to what it is that you want to do, and also be kind to yourself and love yourself. So things did happen and things are happening, but way different and slower, much slower than I thought they would. Has taught me patience and is teaching me patience still. So working on it.
Germany is ahead of us, right? By
In
time,
what?
by time.
In time, yes, yes. Germany
So
is
when
9
did
hours
you
ahead.
leave? When did you leave?
I
How old?
left. I was 20 when I first visited the United States, and 21 when I moved there.
So your education was totally different than the education actually in the
Yes,
United States. That
yes.
Oh my God, I gotta give it to you again. You had to learn English, or you
Yeah.
already knew English a little bit, broken
We had
English.
it. We had it in school, but you're not really fluent in a language until you live in a country that has the language where you can't escape it and you just have to use it. So yeah.
What made you want to come to this country?
Well, I was in Prague for a summer, and in Prague, I studied in a film school for just a summer.
I heard
And
of Prague.
Prague is great. And I had an
I
American
don't
boy.
know. I want to go.
Go. It's a beautiful city. It's absolutely stunning. It's like Harry Potter. It's stunning and beautiful and real and gritty. But I had an American boyfriend from that film school, and so I came to visit him in Seattle. That was actually the first place I've ever come to in the United States. And I thought everything was like Seattle. And then I got a bit of a culture shock as I moved around. But I've seen different corners of the US, and I'm still gonna see a couple more. But yeah, loved it.
I'm so happy now. Like I don't know. It's just something about your aura. And like, tell me, how did you like? Where do you see yourself going in the future?
More of this. I like writing. I love storytelling. I want to do this solely. I want to write some scripts, some for other people to direct, some for me to direct. I want to continue writing some books here and there. I just want to focus on my stories, and I want to collect more stories too. I love interviewing people. I like digging deep. I write some pieces that are quite controversial too, um, very close to real journalism, and some are a bit dicey, but I like doing that. I like finding stories that really need to be told, sometimes in a different way, and doing the research, doing the work. And there's a lot out there because all you have to do as a writer is sit and listen. That's it. That's really it. And then you just, do the work. That's the second part of that's it. But yeah, that's a lot of fun for me. So I want to continue doing that. And I want to direct more. That's the area that's, my next step, directing more, because that's where I'm at home. I'm at home on set. I love sets. I love that energy. I love the creative collaborative process. It's awesome.
Tell me about those stories that's uncut and unedited, which means like nobody knows about, because you said they're a little dicey. Nobody knows about, and it's unedited, which you haven't really brought it, to production yet, like
Right.
for.
Well, one of the ones I found a couple of years ago is a tale about two fathers on the opposite end of the American abortion debate, right? It's a
Mhm.
very dicey topic. It's the American hornet's nest. It comes back every 4 years in the election cycle. And
Yes.
yes, it's one of the four deciding election factors, right? And there's no way to discuss it properly, really, in any state, because people get very passionate about it, but they don't boil it down to a factual discussion without emotion. And the story that I found was beautiful and tragic and wild because it was about the woman in between that didn't have a voice and these two fathers on the opposite side that both thought they were doing the right thing for their children for the future. They wanted to make the world a better place and ended up both dying for that, leaving a lot of pain behind, leaving a lot of more than that behind. I can't quite tell you all the details because some of it is currently being picked up for production, but it's stories like that that really get you because you don't even have to take a side. You examine the story and you look at the goals of some of these people and how that makes them have common ground, and that's puzzling. And I like gray zones because that's the uncomfortable part we don't like to live in. So to me that's really interesting, right? That gray zone where it's like, ooh, I don't like what this person stands for, but I get it. And that's a really important thing for me.
As a writer, you get to do you don't get to lie. You get to actually tell your story, your world, you and your world telling your story. And
Right.
it's like, that is an amazing thing, man, where you're telling this story of two men, and they're both on opposite ends of the spectrum. That's pretty cool. That is very cool. I get what you're doing.
I like this story, because it isn't really about picking sides. It's about that gray zone and how uncomfortable it makes you. And if you can stomach that, then you're going to continue thinking about the story. That's the point. And that's the stuff I like. And I found another story recently that I also really loved about somebody who was heavily dealing with PTSD. So things like that then result in generational trauma that we also don't really talk about a father and a daughter relationship. I dove into that story very deeply, went to Alaska, did a lot of research, loved it, absolutely loved it, really felt that energy, and that all went on the page.
Wow. And on a spectrum, like you see yourself going in a future where you are let me gather this together. You don't have to cut me off and think, but your future is doing more of this and getting better and better and better at it. And I'm like, yeah, you already better at it. You just need the right people around you. You just need to, I'm sorry, you just need the right people around you right
You're
now.
very sweet. Thank you. I have some of them, obviously, so I'm very grateful to, my team. So it's going in the right direction, but I can't wait for a little bit more growth so that this is easier. Then I can just focus on the stories. I can do it right. I can interview the right people. I can do the research right. The more resources you have, the easier the stuff gets.
I got two things. When I saw your picture, it was so beautiful to me. You had the old school camera. My God. How
That's a
far back
Bolex.
was that? Huh?
That's a Bolex. What you see, that is one of the first 16 millimeter cameras, film cameras that you have. If you in film school, you are going to learn how to change that film in a changing tent and how to develop it. And you're going to mess up and it's going to look horrendous or it's totally black. That is what we have to learn by hand and how to cut and edit. And no film student still learns this stuff. It's so upsetting to me.
Yes. I don't want to say I learned a lot, but I did learn a little bit, and that's why it what drew me to it. I said, you know about the old school cameras, and those cameras are in black and white, and they're the negative of the new. Well, they're the old age, but they're so important to learn about. They're
Yes, they
so
are.
important.
To me, if you're a filmmaker, even if you shoot digital, right? Like my next film will be shot digitally. We know exactly what we're doing. We already know the lenses. But I think it's crucial to learn old school film cameras, to understand where the art came from, to understand where framing came from, to understand in a freaking dark room how to develop it correctly. Even as a director, if you don't know your lenses, if you don't touch the film, if you've never developed film, then you shouldn't direct.
I agree. I agree. Oh my god, I like that.
You should know your lenses. You should have a seed. You should know what it is like to focus pull or what it's like to lock it up. I think it's really, really vital to do that as a director. A lot of directors know how to deal with actors. Some, know how to do the writing, and that's all great. But I think we also need directors who work with camera teams, who know what it's like to be on a crew, who know how to guide a crew. Because otherwise, those things show and they show quickly.
The picture. I still got to go back to it because we got somebody that's German using. Is this an American film? Like
This
the
will be,
American?
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
all those elements together. That's gonna go house somewhere one day if everything goes well. I hope
yeah.
they do. Just think about it. It could be that picture that you could be at the Emmys or something.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Yeah,
It,
your word in God's ear. I would love that.
and it's
Any of
very low. It's very low for women. It's very low for women to get into filmmaking, and you could be that one, man. Seriously.
working on it slowly, but I'm working on it every
But it
day.
all sounds good. Like the first one, the Nightingale, and the one with the two fathers. Like all of those sound really good, and I think our audience would want to watch it. They don't want to see no more horror about somebody actually a vampire actually killing a vampire, and it's just daunting. They want to
No,
see a little humor. They want to see a little cut pieces,
right.
into that. Yeah.
We've all seen Bram Stoker. We all know Dracula. We all know
Yeah.
their rules. That's boring. I mean, I love Bram Stoker. Don't get me wrong. Adore the guy. But we've all seen it. Let's bring in something new. So my vampires have different rules, and we're going to go all the way back to the Greek vampire rules. So we're going to deal with a little bit of history, but in a fun way.
So, do you, if you had to give a piece of advice to an entrepreneur out there that wants to be in your shoes, because you're very advanced, you're very like educated, and I can tell you work hard to get what you want, and that's what makes you a millionaire or a multi-millionaire. And I appreciate you coming on my show, but tell me how would how can somebody get into your shoes, and what did it take, what determination, what resilience did it take in order to get there?
I want to clear up first. I am not a multimillionaire. I'm still at the beginning. I know what my book makes and how much of the percentage goes back to me. Trust me, I need to sell like J.K. Rowling in order to get there. But a piece of advice, probably for a long time, do something really smart. Do a job that really does bring in the funds for a couple of years so that you have that backing. Because when you don't have to worry about money, you can be creative. You can do all those other things. If you have to worry about money on top of that, it's going to be a harder time. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
And the other piece of advice, dedicate yourself to it. Really dedicate yourself to it. It's a job you have to do. If you are a writer, if writing is what you want to do, you can't just wait for a muse to hit you. It never will. You have to be your own creative muse. You have to decide every day, okay, 2 hours of research, 3 hours of actual screenwriting. Then I'm going to do a couple of hours of structuring and beat sheet. Then I'm going to do deck work. Then I'm going to reach out to professionals. I'm going to do a writing class. And then you fill your day with those things. If you continuously wait for creation to strike you, you can stand out in the field to wait for lightning. It's about as likely. So it has to really be work. It's a job. So that's my advice, network, be kind, remember people's names, say hello, reach back out. Don't be annoying, but reach back out, and then do you work, just work.
Do you think that how does the sound stage, because we're almost about that, it's almost about that time to end, but how how does swaying a crew, you didn't say it in that way, but actually making a crew move with you, how
Mhm.
does that work?
It depends. Like as a woman, it works. It for me, it always takes like a beat, like an hour, until they know that I know my shit. So it takes about an hour. They see me as a pretty girl coming on set, and they're like, "Ah, we're gonna fuck with this one." And then it takes like one or two. It's I know these guys. You know these guys. It's always one. It's always one, and then you make a joke that's on the money, and you're in, and that's how that goes. And then they're on your side, and then you can do what a good leader does. You ask for advice when you need it. You take the advice that works, and you lead, and you do it with kindness. You don't do it with tyranny. You're like, okay, this is what I want to do. We're gonna go make the day, which is what your first AD wants you to do. So you make the time. You do it well. You come in with a plan. You come in with a plan B. You come in with a plan C if it's difficult. And then you run that by your team leaders beforehand. Like I have my department heads, I have my DP, I have my gaffer, I have my electrician. I have all those people that I usually meet with beforehand to run that plan by. And they can tell me, this might not work, or this might be difficult, or we might need this crane for that. Outside, it's difficult. We still don't have the permission for the drone or whatever it is, right? All of these little problems. And then you adjust ahead of time. On set, if there's a different problem, you just stay calm, you stay quiet, and you move along. And you go on to your plan B and your plan C, and you do it as a team. And that's the only thing you do. Because on set, as your director, for me, it's my job to be there for everybody else. The actual work happens ahead of time.
They have drones. I
Well,
heard.
for outside drone shots, those little things like that we use outside all the time. I've used them in my last little short. I'm going to be using them in my next film. Sometimes in specific parts of the country, drone shots are not allowed. For example, in national parks. So you have to think of that ahead of time. If I needed a specific location, you can shoot in national parks, but there you can't use a drone shot, right? So you have to know that ahead of time. You have to plan. You either change where you shoot this part that you need, or you have to change the shot that you're doing. And those are all considerations that you have to know before you get into the day.
If you had to choose between a different type of drone, like from either Best Buy, or do you get it through a specialized company, your drones?
I don't get the drone. That I'll leave to the drone operator, because they're the specialists with that, and they have the license that they need, because usually they need a helicopter license in order to operate that drone as well. So those are licensed individuals. We just, as a production, I tell my producers what we need and what kind of camera and lens we need. And I always shoot anamorphic lenses. So it is a little bit heavier and a little bit more involved. So there's a limit to the low drones we can use, and we have to use something a little bit more sturdy. And then for how long I need them, for how many shots and how many days. And then we go hire a correct drone operator and plan that out and plan it all through, all of it to the T. And that's really all we can do. But I don't buy a drone myself, because you can't rely on that. You don't have the licenses which you need for a feature film if you're publishing it. You never know how they behave, especially with wind patterns and all of these things. You could damage something, you could hurt somebody. So for a film with an insurance package and a finishing bond is called to finish that feature film, I would hire that part out.
Tell me about your panoramic lens.
Anamorphic? Anamorphic
Anamorphic.
lenses.
Tell me,
Anamorphic.
is that the old school lenses? Since it's heavier, because usually, they want to go lighter every year or every 5 to 10 years
Right.
with their equipment.
Anamorphic lenses fit on most cameras.
Okay.
From like, you can have them on a Red, you can have them on, all the beautiful little things on an Alexa. And it's a format. It's wider, it is more cinematic, it looks gorgeous. It gives your image, for me, it gives your image a serenity, right? It's definitely not your Instagram format. So an anamorphic lens, if you Google it after we're done, you see what it does. And you're going to get a couple of images on Google that are, you're going to just go like, oh, I see what you mean. You have the 4:3, the normal tiny little screen. Then you have the 16:9. It's a little wider. You have anamorphic. It's even wider. It's just, there's something, grand about it.
So it morphs. It doesn't morph, but
It's
it basically absorbs the surroundings around it.
No, it's just a different format lens. It's just the lenses we're using specifically are going to be Zeiss lenses. It's a brand, but they're heavier and they're professional camera lenses for an Arri Alexa, the camera type, right? So they're just heavy pieces of equipment, and there's a whole lens kit, and they're all incredibly expensive. So they have to be carried by a drone that will not drop them.
And I hate to say this. Okay, if can you say exactly how to reach you? Sorry,
Yes,
I just got so swamped into your
I love
world.
it.
I was like, that is
I love
crazy.
it. You guys can always reach me on Instagram. I have an Instagram just for the book, and book talk too. It's on Death of a Nightingale for both Instagram and TikTok. And then me, myself, I'm Annika Pampel on Instagram. I will fairly warn you, I will post my dog. It's cute, so she goes on Instagram too. So it's not just professional pictures. There's also a sausage dog.
Okay, well, I want to stay on the line. I want to thank you all for joining my show. Like, I hope that the sausage dog actually watches this. This would be good. And
Yes.
okay, you all take care, be safe, and I'll see y'all guys another time. Bye.